I'm going to show you how to use Papercraft CNC cutting machines or digital die cutters to assist in stained glass design. Normally when you think of digital cutting machines, you might think of something like this decal I cut for a friend's custom computer. But you can do a lot more with these digital cutting machines. I'll show you how to make vinyl patterns that are way superior to paper patterns, as well as how to draw directly on glass using one of these crafting machines to really speed up the design and creation process. Very exciting. To best understand this video, you'll previously need to have made a Tiffany foil method sun catcher and cut a stained glass pattern out of paper before. If you haven't done that, there's a nifty montage at the end of this video that shows you what the process looks like. To do this, you'll need some materials, and you can come back to this list in the future. So the video is broken into two parts. One, the software, Inkscape, and then two, using the software and the machine together to create patterns and to draw directly on the glass. So let's take a look at the software first. The free program that we will use to drive the paper cutter is Inkscape. Inkscape is available on multiple operating systems, and it's a pretty straightforward download. Once you have Inkscape, then you need to format the Inkscape workspace. When you first open it, it looks like this. Go to File, Document Properties, and you're going to have to switch your default units to whatever measurement system you work in. I work in inches for this purpose because all of my stained glass supplies are in inches. I'm not going to change the page size. That doesn't matter to me right now. If you want to design a specifically sized window, you could choose the width and height and design it all within this program. Now that I've set the units, which you can see on my rulers here, and my document area size, I'm now going to set my pattern shear size. Here I'd like to make a note about pattern shear width. This green strip was cut from paper using my pattern shears, and then above it, the white strip was cut by the machine. The reason the machine matches the pattern shears is when I set my offset, my pattern shear width, I set it at half the width I want. So since the shapes are connected by one line and I'm going to inset all the shapes, that means that two shapes that touch one line, I have to add together their inset to create the space between them, which is to say algebraic thinking. To sum it up, if you're going to do the method I'm showing you, make your inset half the width you actually want it to be. So I'm going to go to Edit, I'm going to go to Preferences, and I'm going to select Behavior, Steps, and then I'm going to change Inset Outset. This is the equivalent of changing your pattern shear width. So for reference, the sizes of pattern shears in decimals are 1/16 of an inch is 0.0625, and so I need to divide 1/16 in half, which is 1/32, and 1/32 of an inch is 0.03125. And there we go. Oh, never mind. Okay, good enough. So once that's set, it's time to import a drawing. So for my source material for this, I'm just going to pull a picture of a cordon bleu finch off of Google. And then I'm going to paste it into my workspace. To resize it, I can drag the corners, but if I hit the Control key, it will keep it the same size. See? Squishy crazy, Control key, same aspect ratio. I can view, zoom in, and see that it says plus and minus, so I can use the keyboard tools too. So from the menu versus from the keyboard. And I've got my bird. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to trace my bird. To trace it, I'm going to select this ink pen tool. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. Here's my favorite way, is I draw these connecting straight lines around the bird, like that. And then, once I've drawn the connecting straight lines, I'm going to go through and manipulate them to make it a round edge shaped. So now I'm going to select my Edit Paths by Nodes tool, grab the lines, and start making them curve out to be the shape of the bird. And I think this is the most fun and easy way to quickly trace a complex image into a simple form. If I can't select between it because I can't quite see what's going on, I will zoom further in with the plus key or the menu option and manipulate from there. So, see, I'm making these little feet and stuff like that. So I'm going to go trace this bird, and we'll talk again shortly. I've spent about 10 minutes tracing the finch, and now I'm ready to move forward. So I'm going to select the arrow tool, click the background, and I'm going to edit, cut the background, and here's my lines. Now I'm going to format the fill tool. So I'm going to first select some of my lines, using the arrow tool, dragging and grabbing. And I'm going to look at how wide they are. Right now they're 1 pixel wide. This is important. When I go to fill those areas, I need to make sure that the grow shrink is equal to the length of the lines. So if my lines are 1 pixel wide, my grow shrink is 1 pixel wide. Gotta do it. Now this close gaps thing, if you didn't touch the ends of 2 lines together and left a tiny hole, this will automatically figure that that tiny hole was an accident and fill it in. For the moment, I'm going to choose none, because when it closes gaps, it loses accuracy. But if I haven't closed some gaps and it won't fill in, I'll go and switch from none to small. So now I've got grow shrink at 1, close gaps at none, selected my paint bucket. I'm going to start filling in some colors for my bird. Grab some light brown. And when I want to switch colors, I'll click out, choose a different color, click my paint bucket, and then fill. And I'll go for something brownish for the branch. So, little reddish eye, and I am good to go. Now I can number these pieces at this time too if I wanted to. I could like draw or type in letters. So if I wanted to type in letters onto the pieces, I could be like 1 and 2. And then I would have to select everything that I'd done and go to path, object to path, and that should make those numbers carry over. But I don't need to number this piece, so I'm just going to go with that. From this design, we can draw directly on glass or cut a pattern. I'm going to show you now how to draw directly onto glass. Now I am going to open a new window, wait for it to load, and I am going to change the document to match my cutting base size. So in this case, I'm going to be using an 8x6 cutting area. Hit enter, and now I can zoom in, scroll in. And I've chosen 8x6 because that matches my curio. Let's take a quick look at the website here. The curio comes with this size base, which is an 8.5x6. So I'm sizing to match the base it comes with. I own one of these suckers, the 8.5x12, which would allow me to draw on a whole lot more glass. But I'm demoing for this. So back to the program. Now that I've got my size for cutting my glass, I'm going to go back to my bird, and I'm going to pick out my pieces. Click the select tool, and I'm going to click and hit shift and select all the pieces of the color I want. Now that they're all selected, I'm going to go to copy, going to switch windows, going to go to paste. And aside from accidentally grabbing the head, which I can now hit delete on, I've got all of my glass pieces ready to lay out for cutting. So I'll work on that now. Here's the pieces laid out, plus one piece I missed that I copied over individually. And you can see I've drawn some of the main cutting lines that I'll use to split the glass up. These pieces are irregular and won't tessellate very well, so I tried my best not to waste glass. Here's how I manipulated the pieces. Select the piece once, and then click and drag to move it. Click the piece again, and see how it turns into the rotation lines to rotate it. Click a whole bunch of times, you can go back to the point editor and fix little minor details. So now that this is all laid out, I'm going to create a reference square that's 1 inch in size. because unfortunately Inkscape has one big problem, which is when we go and we export it as the file type we need, it screws up the sizing ratio. So we're going to have to resize it when we bring it into the Silhouette software. What I'm going to do is take a guide from the corner, so click and drag from the ruler, and I'm going to go, say, arbitrarily to the 3. And then I'll go arbitrarily to the, I don't know, the 5. That looks kind of cool. And I am building a square that's exactly 1 inch in size, or close enough to 1 inch where I don't care. And this is going to let me make sure that even if it exports it to the wrong size, I can resize it to exactly 1 inch. This is probably the weakest part of this method. Hopefully Inkscape will fix this in future versions. Okay. And the sides of the square should all match 1 inch. Now I'm ready to export it. I have my pieces laid out and I have my reference inch. So I go to File, Save As. I'm going to save it as a DXF, and I'm going to call it Cordon Finch Blue Pieces. Cool. I will make sure that RoboMaster and LW Polyline are deselected. I'm going to select my base unit as inch to match my document. At the time of making this video, this doesn't work, but it should in the future. Then click OK. Now I can open up my Silhouette software, and I can open up my Cordon Finch Blue Pieces. And here we go. Here's our pieces. But look, that reference square is way different than the 1 inch square. So I'm going to go to Edit, select All, and I'm going to line that square up, zoom in, and I'm going to resize this document so that square matches. One inch. Like I said, this is the weakest part of this thing. If you put the square in the upper left corner, it will be easier to resize the whole piece. I just don't plan ahead that well. Okay, line should be on top of it. One more little bit. Alright, I'm happy with that. I'm not going for that much more accuracy. Now I am ready to cut my pieces. I'm going to move the pieces as far into the corner as I can within the red safety lines. That will leave a little more grinding for me to do, but I'm okay with that. And now I'm going to right-click and tell it to release the compound path. Now I can go get rid of the square. Hooray! So I'm going to Edit, select All, then go to my cutting options. The way I have the tool set up is I have it set up, and I'll show you in a little bit, on Tool 2. I'm going to select Copy Paper, and I use the embossing tool because I have my pen tip exactly where the embossing tool tip is, and I just leave these the same. For the platform, my glass that I select is equal to 3 platforms, so I will show you now on the device.
For glass that has a texture, like this glass, put the texture side down on the mat so that the marker is going to draw on the smooth side. Otherwise, you're not going to get a good line.
And remember, whenever you draw on the back of glass, you need to mirror flip your design, otherwise it'll come out backwards.
For using the pen adapter, I like to use a Bic metallic marker. And the way you're supposed to use it is the pen slides into a sized adapter. In this case, the gray one fits the Bic. And then it goes into the adapter that makes it go into the Silhouette. What's nice about the Bic pens is you jam the gray adapter all the way on, slip the white adapter on, and then you can fine adjust by screwing up and down. And what I do is I make it perfectly match an existing tool, such as this emboss tool, and then I use the settings for the tool I'm matching to the marker. So you'll see me use the emboss tool settings with the marker.
I have
a 2mm and a 1mm base, and those are the same thickness as the glass I've chosen. So for the cutter, I'm telling it it's on base 6 because I have one 1mm base, one 2mm base, which puts me at 3. And then I have the equivalent of another 3mm because of the glass. So it thinks it's on base size 6. I can micro adjust the thickness if the glass doesn't match the bases. Since it matches so closely, I'm just using the default thickness of 15. I previously spent some time testing this, and once I got the marker at the right depth in the pen adapter, I colored in the height that it should sit at, so if it slides I can return it there.
You can see I tested both a Sharpie and a Bic marker. The rubber grip on the Bic marker prevents it from sliding, so it was the superior choice.
I will do a quick line test to show you what it looks like if you put the marker too far in or too shallow. How high the marker is important. Here you can see this beautiful thick circle done by slamming the marker against the glass. It produced a nice line, but it's starting to destroy the tip of the marker doing that. Then here, by sliding the marker up, I get a much thinner line that's going to increase the length of the felt tip lifespan. So make sure you're making a thin, light line so you don't destroy your marker. After running enough tests in the Curio to simulate a couple designs, you can see that both markers have their tips blunted, which means in between designs you would have to dial in and extend the marker. So you'd have to go righty-tighty so that the marker tip stuck out more.
I chose not to demo paint pens. Paint pens, which have a valve where when you add pressure, paint flows out of the valve, are really great. You can get them in fine tips and make very nice fine lines without wearing down a felt tip. However, not all locations sell them, and you have to get the speed and the pressure exactly right, or you end up with a puddle of paint. Now that we looked at directly drawing our lines on the glass, let's look at doing a really detailed vinyl pattern. So first thing I'm going to do is draw a line. I haven't changed anything on my pen tool, so I get the same kind of line. While it's selected, I'm going to say Edit, Select Same Stroke Style, and then I can hit Delete, Cut, whatever, and all those pesky lines are gone. Now that I've got my bird, remember how I set my pattern shear size on the inset? I can go to Path, Inset, and it's like I trimmed it with my pattern shears. And I can send this whole thing to be cut by vinyl. If I want to get fancy, I can start sticking 1B for blue, 2B for blue, and then like 1T for tan, and have it cut those out too. So if I want to make those letters into cuttable shapes, I will go to Path, and I will take it and make it Object to Path. And now this should no longer be editable font, but instead be a path that can be cut out by my machine. I'm undoing what I just showed you because I am going to make this bird a lot bigger. I've decided in the process of this video that I'm kind of attached to the bird and I really like it. So I'm going to select everything, grab the arrow, hit Control click, and make it the size I want. Now what I've done in View is I've clicked View Zoom 1:1, and for my monitor that makes this almost exactly 1 inch. You can zoom in or out till you're looking at the actual size of your finished piece on your screen. And I want this to be a nice little sun catcher, so I'll probably make it about 10 inches long. And again, I am saving my reference square. I've zoomed out. I am moving my reference square out of the line of fire, selecting all my pieces, and then going back and adding my inset, path, inset. And I think this is going to be a charmingly oversized cordon bleu finch. So now I will set this to cut my vinyl. Having saved my file to a DXF without any of the line types selected, and then I have opened it in Silhouette, I'm now ready to resize my little inch marker there. So that's life size. And you might say, no, it's going to be far too big. Well, I don't care if it's far too big. I can move the pieces around. Okay, so that's the size I wanted it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click after selecting my design, and I'm going to say Release Compound Path. And now I can pull out all the shapes individually. So when I select it, if I rotate it, say at an angle here to try to fit as much in as possible, and it doesn't quite fit, that's okay. I could be like, hey, hi there, tail, and just shove the tail over here, and I can say, hey, hi there, stick, and shove the stick over there. You'll notice I chose not to keep the numbers on this. That's because I'm eerily good at keeping track of stained glass pieces. If it was more complicated, I would definitely have the numbers on here to keep track of the pieces. So now I'm ready to cut my vinyl. I'm going to go to my tools. Make sure they're all selected on the right tool type. Tool 1, vinyl. It says Silhouette brand. I bought the bargain brand at the craft store. And then I will have tested this previously, and I know that for mine, I can use ratchet blade setting 1, and these settings here work fine. And so then I'm ready to send to my Silhouette.
To prep the curio for the vinyl, I first laid down all 6 layers of base, and then cut a piece of self-adhesive vinyl, which I got on sale for even cheaper than that at a craft store, on the sticky cutting mat. I'm going to slide it in, then turn on the machine. Okay, great. So now I'm ready to take my design and send it. Alright, we'll come back to this in a couple minutes. The nice thing about the vinyl is you can reposition it a lot. With this particular vinyl, I've repositioned this 12 times, I think. You can see it's still got really great stick, now 13 times. And aside from where I wreck it by lifting it up by the edge, the piece has been really repositionable. Now I have also taken a piece and soaked it in water, then let it dry out, and it still sticks. So there's a chance that if you were to store this by sticking it to wax paper, you might be able to reuse pattern pieces even if they've gotten wet.
Let's look at the process as a montage. First pattern layout, then rough cutting of pattern, then fine precision cutting of pattern, layout to make sure all the pattern pieces are cut, grind with the large head grinder, grind with the small head grinder appropriately, lay out the pieces, make sure they all fit nice and tight, save the pattern pieces, peel them off, then use adhesive foil on the cut pieces, pin the pieces, flux them on the back. You're going to do some tack and then solder, flip it over, front beading, get that beautiful stained glass look, followed by patina. Then once the patina's done, clean the whole piece off and it's ready to be mounted. In this case I mounted this piece in a lantern as part of a room full of lanterns for sort of like this peaceful bathroom environment. And I've got electronic candles behind all the birds and lanterns, so the camera doesn't capture it too well, but when you turn on the fake electric candle you get this really pretty sort of flickering bird look. The end.
You know, you're very hard to draw when you don't hold still. Hard to draw, hard to draw.